Oh, can I just say, so this next film, a lot of hype for it. And the reason I know there's a lot of hype for it is a lot of people have asked me about it. But when you posted a story of you at your screening, not that he was taking a picture during the screening.
I took a picture when I was allowed to take a picture.
Allowed to take a picture. We got a lot of DMs being like, "Oh, and how was it?
Yes.
How was it? How was it? How was
Yes.
it?" Which usually is an indication of curiosity.
So this is the Smashing Machine, which has a huge amount of hype behind it, mainly, but not least because it has The Rock as its lead character. And The Rock is not just one of the biggest actors on the planet, but as we talked about in our Instagram accounts rundown,
we did.
the 6th highest followed person on the planet. He's one of the biggest celebrities on the planet. You know, former WWE star turned actor, turns box office titan, who in recent years has found himself sort of kind of isolated himself in increasingly poor blockbuster decisions like Red One and the Red Notice,
And even the ones I think did do well commercially are not exactly like the film audiences type of movie.
Yeah, he's kind of become further and further away from quality, and this is a clear decision by The Rock to get back and reclaim some sort of integrity and try and do some more interesting projects, because The Rock is getting older. The Rock is 53 now. Yeah. So yes, I went to a screening while you were away. Went to see a lovely, comfortable the Odeon West End. We went to Killers of the Flamingo.
Yes, of course. Great seats.
Very well behaved audience, I have to say, because it was full of creators. You never know, what people are going to be. But everyone's very good. And yes, Benny Safdie, Emily Blunt, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came on. And you know what? It was one of those moments when The Rock walks in, you're like, fuck, that's The Rock. He's a rock star. Literally, like, wow.
This is part of my reasons to why I think he's so followed. Like, just to look at as a specimen, he looks like a superhero.
He's incredibly well presented, got a great voice, and it was really interesting hearing them talk. Yes, this is directed by Benny Safdie, formerly of the Safdie brothers. They've gone off and split to do 2 sports biopics. We've got the Smashing Machine from
also
Benny.
know him as the hydrogen bomb guy from Oppenheimer.
And now there's a funny moment where it was Ali Plum was doing the introduction, and he said, "Emily and Benny, this is your first time working together." And they said, "Well, no," she said, "because we shared a handshake, a very awkward handshake at Oppenheimer." And Benny was like, "It was the worst day of my life." And they came on and introduced it, and it was great. And it was just great to feel the energy in the room. Yeah, everyone was really excited for it. So, The Smashing Machine, about a biographical picture about the UFC MMA fighter Mark Kerr. I'm going to say this now, as with most sports films, no attachment to the sport itself. I don't really have much knowledge of it. You have a bit more knowledge about MMA.
Surface
level.
I'd say with boxing and MMA, I watch about 2 fights a year.
Yes,
so I'd consider myself the film equivalent of the person who sees Avengers and Spider-Man, but nothing else. So that's like my level of intrigue.
So I really didn't know much about UFC or MMA, never heard of Mark Kerr. There were people I spoke to afterwards who really knew his story, but this stars The Rock, stars Dwayne Johnson. I'm going to try and call him Dwayne Johnson. Stars Dwayne Johnson as Mark Kerr, and this takes place over a period between 1997 and 2000, a very specific point in Mark Kerr's career where he is at the top of his game. He's basically already conquered America. He is an unbeaten fighter in the UFC. During this time, the UFC is expanding, and it is actually playing matches in Japan, but it's not called the UFC there. It's called like Pride or something, like or Strike or something. It's a different brand name, but the concept is the same. He is with his girlfriend called Dawn, who is played by Emily Blunt, and they have a sort of highly intense, loving but hot and cold relationship. And the film sort of opens with a great montage showing why Mark Kerr is the physical dominant person, why he is the main fighter. And when he goes out to Japan, he's on his own negotiating deals. There's a hint that he's getting ripped off a little bit in the money. He's a bit short on money. We're also aware of the fact that he's addicted to painkillers, that he's keeping that very discreet and low key. And it is based on a true story. I think it's just important just to set up the movie that he goes out to Japan and he has a fight, and through certain circumstances, he doesn't win this fight. It's the first time that's happened. And that kind of kicks off a new chapter in this fighter's life. And that is what the film is focusing on, this specific turning point in Mark Kerr's career. And Benny Safdie has talked about how Rocky 3, of all the films to sort of draw inspiration from, Rocky 3 is the example he drew a lot from the Smashing Machine, which I've not seen any Rocky movies except for the Creed ones. And there's something about the trajectory of Rocky and Rocky 3 that he wanted to borrow and bring into this movie. I think it's also worth saying this actually isn't a problem in the film and not noted, but like Mark Kerr, in the period of time that the film is set, was like 28 to 30. The Rock is 53.
Yeah,
But it's just never a problem. His age is never brought up. And because you actually see The Rock in the ring, looking how he does, doing all the fighting, you never question the verisimilitude, the authenticity of him actually doing the fighting.
Right.
And also because Emily Blunt is also closer in age to The Rock, they've created a nice illusion that this is all work. You know what I'm saying? Like, Emily Blunt is like, she's not like a 25-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah.
Emily Blunt doing very good work, by the way, sadly resuming the role of anxious wife from Oppenheimer and A Quiet Place. But nevertheless, always great to see her. She is fantastic. So, The Smashing Machine. I think I'll talk about what I really liked about it. And I'm aware, again, there's lots of hype about this movie. And I'm not going to talk about any more really about the plot because I don't want to spoil anything. And it's also just not that kind of movie. What I really love straight away is that the film strips back all sporting movie cliches. We talked about when we saw F1 that we liked many things about it, but it was like sporting cliches. I got a bag of them. Let's pepper them throughout this long movie. And Benny Safdie has pulled it back and has kind of gives a kind of completely different approach, which I found really refreshing. And like I said, it's focusing on this very specific point in his career when he's already on top. So it's not this kind of like triumphalist kind of tone to it. It's a very different point of his career. It's not to say that the film isn't. It's not to say that the story isn't. It is treading fairly familiar territory that we're used to in other dramas about addiction and sort of a wounded fighter being knocked down and having to train themselves up again. That's kind of fairly familiar. But I really appreciated that, like, this triumphalist tone that we're used to in sports movies. It's kind of been wiped clean, and Benny's doing it to something different. Let's talk about DJ. Let's talk about The Rock. He is great. He is great. It is a very good performance, and I'm actually not that surprised because it's a guy who started in WWE, moved into movies. He's had performance in his life the entire time, and yes, he's also. Not that he needs to be Daniel Day-Lewis or anything, but like he is playing another fighter, so it's not the biggest stretch for him. But I'm not trying to diminish his work in this. I think he's doing great work.
Also, like fighting, performing in the way that wrestling is like true to like bring it all the way back home for him. Right?
And those ring fights have a real true authenticity to it. I think he is very good in this. I wasn't thinking, oh, that's The Rock. I think he carries himself really well. He's had minor. In the way they've done something to his eyes and his sort of eyebrows in this to sort of make him look like
he's got something going on, doesn't he?
Yeah, something, but it's to just sort of slightly distort your vision to not be like that's The Rock. But I think he's doing great work. People are like, oh, is he going to win an Oscar? I'm like, I almost feel like that conversation is out of our hands, unhelpful. Just enjoy the fact that The Rock has done a really good performance in this movie. Emily Blunt, like I said, always doing great stuff. You also have. In this, the name of him, I just need to pull up, is UFC fighter Ryan Bader. Sorry, MMA fighter Ryan Bader is playing Mark Coleman in this. Mark Coleman was Mark Kerr's best friend, fellow fighter, and also trainer in a capacity. And you also have Bas Rutten in this playing himself. Benny Safdie, I think, is the real triumph here, though. I think with all the stuff talking about The Rock, I think Benny Safdie is the one who's really showing some great skills. I feel like he just, like I said, the film is not necessarily that novel in its story, but he really elevates it. And one thing to talk about is like the sound design in it. When you get in the ring, the punches really hit and they crunch and it's nasty and there's people were wincing and sort of shrieking back from it. And I saw an interview where Benny Safdie talked about how they did the sound design for the punches and they actually had like a piece of meat that they would hit to get the sound, and they would make different sounds. He said, I wanted the first punch to sound like you're hitting skin, I want the second punch to sound like you're hitting muscle, and I want the third punch to sound like you're hitting bone. And your face there says it all. And there are some really uncomfortable moments of violence. But when they go in the ring as well, it switches into this kind of frenetic jazz drumming, Whiplash, Birdman-esque headspace, which is just really important in capturing it. And like I said, I never doubted the fighting. I could really see the kind of the sweat and the blood and the muscles in the ring. I also think it has some just fantastic uses of music in this. Some of my favorite I've seen in a long time. There's a specific use of Bruce Springsteen's Jungle Land song, which is played during a sort of an argument scene, which is very present in the scene. It's not like it's playing on the radio in the background. It's very much in there, but it feels like the third voice in the argument. And the way it's layered in and interjects is really strong. And I thought, wow, that's really, really beautiful. And I think in general, that what I liked is that there are individual moments during this movie. I was like, that's really strong and beautiful. They go to, again, this is not, they're not major plot details or anything, just observations. Like they go to a carnival, him and Dawn, and they watch it's not, I don't know what the name of the activity is, but just cars just smashed together. It's like a monster trucks. They're not monster trucks,
right? Yeah.
And he's watching that, and everyone else, I know, everyone's having a good time, but he's not. And there's like this nice parallel with just the blunt violence, these cars smashing against each other. There's a training montage to My Way, and in that he's training hard and he's thinking about his steps, and the way that the camera sort of captures him practicing his movement is like a dancer. It's like a ballet dancer getting ready for something. And I really like that. The whole film, by the way, looks gorgeous. It's really shot beautifully. And there's also a needle drop, another use of music towards the end of the movie. So we almost had the opportunity to speak to Benny Safdie. It didn't work out. But there's one needle drop that they use, which is a song called Corridor of Dreams by this band called Cleaners from Venus, right? And I know that track, and it's by a guy who basically did his own music in his garage in the 80s. And I love that song. And when it started to play, I was like, I have never, ever heard a film use that song before. And I thought it was used just perfectly. And I was like, I so wish I could have had a chance to talk to Benny Safdie and be like, why that track in particular? It was like if you watch a superhero movie and it was like, there's a cameo there from someone. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I just, the world of the fights feel great. I would say that I don't think the film is the knockout punch that everyone is kind of expecting it to be. That's just personal to me. It might be the fact that I'm not very close to the sport. I'm not that close to the story. I think that, like I said, it is treading familiar territory. And although I admire the fact that Benny Safdie's stripped away the sporting cliches, there were a few moments where I thought, I wouldn't have missed a fist pump here or something. I wouldn't have missed a high or a low, because in doing so, you actually get a story that kind of hums along, fairly languid pace.
More true to life, maybe.
Yeah, but I have to say there were one or two moments where I thought, am I bored?
Right.
Am I bored here? Yeah. And I do think, again, it might be just my personal appreciation of the sport, but I started to wonder whether Mark Kerr's story is that interesting, other than the fact that he was one of the first big MMA fighters, and now MMA fighters go on and earn huge amounts of money, and that wasn't the case back then. But it's also that the specific period we focused on between 97 and 2000, I kind of thought, I think there's a darker story here with Mark Kerr, or more interesting story that goes into his twilight years and looks at his, the effects of head trauma and being in the ring for that long. And I just sometimes felt that every time the film was sort of going to somewhere quite dark, it just pulled its punches a little bit, ironically. Not to say there are moments of great emotional stress in this and that are very powerful, but I just wondered, and someone mentioned to me afterwards that The Rock is producer on this movie, don't forget. He's also on the board isn't he on the board for the company that owns UFC or something like that? And I feel like the film almost pulls its punches slightly in shining a light on what doesn't work with the sport and the dangers of the sport and that kind of thing. And I think that's a shame. I think that's what I was missing watching it. I didn't feel emotionally invested in his story so much that I thought, wow, oh my God, what a journey. I kind of thought, okay, this is a guy.
You don't have to watch and engage with the sport to watch film.
Well, there you go. I'm just trying to keep an open mind. Because I came out and there's some people who absolutely knew things. Right. They loved the fact that there were MMA fighters in this movie.
Oh, fine.
But I just kind of thought, okay, it's a solid, fairly square, quite straightforward story that we've seen beats of before, executed fantastically by Benny Safdie, I have to say. Absolutely amazing. He won Best Director at Venice. I'm like, absolutely well done. Yeah. And elevated by a really great performance by Dwayne Johnson and supported by Emily Blunt.
Style-wise, is it represent quite a departure from that Safdie brothers style that I think became really distinct from those two in terms of like frantic, slightly neurotic, fast-paced, heart attack type cinema? Obviously, this is different.
Yeah.
Would you say this as a story about Mark Kerr is very different?
Pacing-wise different.
Yeah.
The way it looks, no. It's still got tight close-ups.
I don't have a problem with.
No, I don't. Yeah, it's still got tight close-ups. It's still got other than the Hollywood actors of Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, I like the fact that this is a world populated by former fighters and everyday looking people some of whom look like they've had their nose broken 3 times and they've got cauliflower ears.
Kind of like how in Uncut Gems, the other people in the Diamond District really looked like real people who could very much exist in that world. That was quite nice.
And that's what you get in this, which I really appreciate.
And also like taking a star out of their usual comfort zone and putting them in, like with Adam Sandler, right? And even you could argue Robert Pattinson. They've done that Benny has to for this, but you can argue the Safdie brothers have sort of made a trend of taking someone who you think is doing do one thing, putting them something and different out of their comfort zone and it working.
I mean, I hate to say this, but there were a couple of moments watching some of the fighting towards the end, and maybe this is just me pulling out the film a little bit. I sounded like my dad when I say this, but I was like, what a silly sport. I was just like, what a silly sport. You're just beating the shit out of each other.
It's fights with no rules apart from eye gouging and crotch shots.
Like, that shouldn't really be what I should be thinking in this movie. Yeah. I should be really caring for this wounded beast at the center. Some great stuff in there. Like I said, solid, perfectly fine. I don't think it's this kind of triumphant movie. I think it's the main talking point is that Dwayne Johnson is very good in it. But Benny Safdie, I think, is making some excellent decisions in this. And I look forward to him having a long, full, great creative career. Do
you think the brothers will come back together? Or do you think?
Well, we've talked about this before. Maybe, but I just don't think so. And I don't think it's because of bad blood. I think it's because they'll go and express themselves in other ways. I hope they haven't fallen out. I hope they still go home for Christmas.
A bit of brotherly love.
Yeah.
Give them their Oasis reunion tour.
Yeah.
We'll ask for it, and 20 years later, they'll come on and give each other hugs.
Good time too.
Yeah, good time too. Well, there you go, guys. If you had thoughts about Smashing Machine, as I'm sure you will do as it comes out, please, we'd love to hear what you guys think. If you loved it, or if you're not quite sure, maybe there were a couple of niggles here and there. Send in your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, your reviews to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. We'll read them out on a future episode of the show.
There you go.